Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be looking at the Ghostflame Legend Spike. The Ghostflame Legend Spike is one of the few items in the game which is actually programmed to spawn both Indestructible and Ethereal. If you're unaware of this, there are quite a few items in the game that will spawn Indestructible, but they are forbidden to spawn Ethereal. However, there are very specific items in the game that can spawn both Ethereal and Indestructible at the same time, and the Ghostflame Legend Spike is one of them. A couple of the others are things like the Wraith Flight, Ghost Glaive. There's also some that repair durability, for instance, like the Honsudan Yari. But some of them will not always spawn Ethereal, like, for instance, Sandstorm Trex will not always spawn Ethereal. However, the Ghostflame Legend Spike always spawns Ethereal. That's part of the mechanic of how this item works. So right off the bat, you can see it has some very interesting statistics on it. Let's go over them, shall we? So we have 156 to 238 one-handed damage, which is relatively high. It has 57 dexterity requirement and 55 strength requirement, which is relatively low. I think most characters in Diablo 2, even if you're running like low specs, can usually put this on with no issue, even if it's just putting in like 5 points of dexterity. We have a level 66 requirement, which is actually kind of low for an elite item, and a lot of the times with elite items you'll see 70, 80, sometimes even like 85 for the requirement. So 66 is particularly low for an elite item. We have Indestructible mechanic, as we were talking about earlier. This is indestructible and it will not break. We also have a variable enhanced damage of 190 to 240%. And basically what this does is it kind of makes this even more rare. So even if you do happen to find a Ghostflame, there's a very good chance that you might find a bad ED Ghostflame and you might not want to actually use it. It does have ignores target's defense on it as well, which is definitely great because a lot of the times when you're using this, it would be like on a necromancer or something who's obviously trying to stab people with poison dagger, and he might not necessarily want to throw like 300 points into dexterity so he can actually hit stuff and have, you know, like a bunch of things like blessed aim and an enchant running. So ignores target's defense is going to give him that opportunity to land a bunch of poison daggers on stuff that he might not otherwise be able to. You could theoretically use this on just about anybody, though, but there is a big downside to the dagger form, which is relatively short range. So things like Berserker's Axes, for instance, are basically range 3. A Ghostflame Legend Spike is essentially the same thing as taking off your weapon and punching somebody as far as range is concerned. It's the lowest range weapon in the game. We also have an interesting mechanic here of magic damage. So magic damage is kind of odd, and a lot of people don't really know like quite how to rate it as far as what it does successfully to a target. And the answer to that question is I usually multiply it by 3. So whenever I see magic damage on an item, I usually multiply the effectiveness of it by 3 to get a kind of an idea of it versus another type of damage. So like, say for instance it said fire damage instead. Fire damage would be like almost like 350 to be the equivalent of the 108 magic damage. And the reason for this is because most monsters in the game don't have any magic resistance whatsoever, which means that magic damage tends to be far more effective than fire, lightning, or ice. And so that's why I always just multiply that damage by 3. I'm just like, okay, if it has magic damage on it, just multiply it by 3, and that's kind of the reality of how much you're actually dishing out to the target. We also have another modifier here of mana stolen per hit of 10 to 15%, and I would assume that this is specifically for the Necromancer because I don't really see any other characters who would really need that much mana steal. So, you know, think about like a Poison Dagger Necromancer who's just like spamming his Novas. I mean, he could go in, he could stab a target a couple times and refill his mana pool relatively easily. We also have +2 to light radius, which I don't know why they insist on throwing this on everything, but most items will have some kind of light radius on them. Like the Mighty Scepter here, the Redeemer has +3. I mean, when you look at items, they usually include light radius on there on a lot of items, and it's just kind of like an afterthought. And without even thinking about it, you usually end up with a little bit of extra light radius. Like there's +8 on the Hellfire Torch. It's not really something most people ever really think about. And because this can't be upgraded, and because this is always in the ethereal form, there's really only one way you're ever going to find it. You're going to find it in this form. And there's really nothing you can do to it other than socket it and put something else in it. And since it's already indestructible, you don't have to throw, for instance, a Zod rune in there because it doesn't need a Zod rune. You could throw something else in there, for instance. Like maybe you want to throw a shale rune in there so it attacks faster. Or maybe you want to throw a like a 1540 jewel in there or something so that you get a little bit more damage out of it. Let's take a look and see what the 1540 jewel does to this. So we go from 156 to 238 damage to 174 to 266 damage. So, I mean, it's a decent amount of physical damage, but it doesn't really seem to be its main focus. I mean, you could theoretically use this on a barbarian as an offhand weapon, and it would certainly function very well to give you your, your resistances and stuff. Your mana back. I mean, like take for instance this guy. So I've got this guy actually set up for Whirlwind, and what's our player count set to? So we're on 1. Let's go ahead and bump that up to 8. And let's go to the River of Flame. It's a very pretty blue color, though. It's kind of hard to see because it's ethereal, but it is a very pretty blue color. And as you can see, with the Ghostflame in my offhand, I'm not having any trouble maintaining my mana cost. And on players 8, I'm still managing to murder a whole lot of things. And it's because this weapon is so fast. Daggers have a really fast base speed, and it's also a particularly high damage dagger as well. So when you're attacking targets, even in players 8, you can maintain your lifesteal. The magic damage is also being applied multiple times as you whirlwind. So you have to think about the fact that, like, how many times am I hitting a target as I pass through them? Because the magic damage that's on this is getting applied multiple times as you hit the target. And as we talked about earlier, if you're multiplying it by 300 to get the vague effectiveness of how much that 108 magic damage represents, and then you're hitting the target, like 10 times as you pass through them, you're applying that magic damage 10 times as you pass through them. And so it becomes a lot higher than you would think. I mean, like, let's take 108 times 3, so it's about the equivalent of 324 regular elemental damage. And then say we hit a target 10 times as we pass by. And you know what? Let's even reduce that because we don't have 2 of them on. We only have 1 of them on. So we hit them 10 times, but we only hit them 5 times with the Ghostflame, okay? So instead of times 10, let's do 324 times 5. That's still about 1,620 damage of magic damage, essentially, that's being applied to the targets as you're passing through them. And it adds up to be a lot. Now, you don't get any mana steal or life steal off of that magic damage, and that is unfortunate. But, I mean, it's still enough that you can kill your targets. Am I going to say that this is the best weapon that you could possibly put on your barbarian? No, I'm not. But it certainly makes for an interesting choice, just simply for like a massive amount of mana steal. And it doesn't hit the trash. It doesn't miss the trash. So you wouldn't even have to worry about attack rating because it's got ITD on it. I think its main place is definitely in the hands of a necromancer. But I could certainly see some funny builds using it on Whirlwind or Zeal or something like that, just for laughs. There's really not a lot more to talk about with this weapon, so let's go over to Silo's Pen and let's see if we can figure out where we could potentially find this item. If you wanted to hunt it down, maybe you just want it for your holy grail. Let's see. Alright, so here we are over in Silo's Pen, and because this is a level 66 item, I'm going to assume about 300% magic find. I do usually change the magic find variable depending on the level of the item. And as you can see here, we have some really crappy choices. So Ghostflame drops from Neelathak with a absolutely terrible 1 in 121,702. It drops from regular Bale non-quest for 1 in 15,990, and quest Bale 1 in 10,591. Just absolutely god-awful options. And of course, we also have the Defilers down here, which are always on the list, but literally like lottery chances to drop this item. 1 in 1,711,000, or what is that? 17 million actually? Yeah, 17,114,031. Let's take a look at the super uniques real quick, just to see if there's any super uniques on the list that are worth farming. Frozenstein and Pindle and Snap Chit Chatter are all tied for 1 in 21,897. So Pindle Skin is obviously the easiest to farm there, so it seems like if you really wanted to get this, your best bet would probably be to farm Pindle Skin over and over again. Thresh Socket also has a pretty decent chance, and he's actually pretty easy to get to if you have teleport. You basically just go straight to Frigid Highlands and you teleport to the end of Frigid Highlands, and he's always right there at the end of Frigid Highlands, sitting on the stairs. Akmel the Cursed, Bartek the Bloody, Kalenzo, Lister, these are all terrible chances, but you could possibly get it from them while you're farming Bale. Those are the Bale waves. And it does look like Doc Farron has a really crappy chance as well. And he's not exactly hard to get to. He's right in the middle of the siege zone. So you just teleport up and kill him real quick on your way to kill Thresh Socket. I don't really think it would even kill that much time off your run. As you can see, pretty crappy drop chances for this. The Legend Spike is kind of a difficult one to come by. So you probably won't see very many Ghostflame Legend Spikes. If you do see one, maybe hang on to it. You know, it's a nice little trophy item. It's a fun item that you're probably not going to see every single day, and you know, it has a very interesting, you know, sheen to it, which I think is pretty cool. It's just too bad that you can't actually see the sheen because, you know, it's ethereal. So, you know, you can like barely see the blue sheen like sometimes if you're lucky. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and as always, keep watching.